Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 115 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you, as always, by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am back home in Lander for a short 4-week training cycle leading to a 6-week trip to Waco Tanks, of which ideally the first couple of weeks will be in the spirit of continued training, assuming I have the willpower to see that through and not go directly into performance mode, which we all know is damn near impossible. We'll see, I guess. Right now, I'm absolutely slammed with getting new holds up in the gym, getting training plans written, getting caught up on patron podcast episodes, as well as working on several new products that I think people are going to really like. So I'm not going to dilly-dally here in this intro. If there's one thing that I really love to see, it's local heroes and badasses doing things that give them the spotlight they deserve. And today's episode is with one of those people, Brittany Goris. Brittany came to my attention after she redpointed City Park, a 13 CD fingercrack in Index, Washington, with a really colorful history. And I love history. And this one involves Todd Skinner, sabotage via axle grease, questionable ethics, and all sorts of extreme tactics. And since the whole truth is likely lost to history, I'm just going to let you guys go down that internet rabbit hole rather than trying to sort it all out myself. I saw that Brittany was going to be in the red at the same time that I was, so I hit her up. We sat down for a quick chat at the Lee County Rec Center on one of the many rainy days this season. And thanks to the rec center for letting us use their conference room, which also doubles as a hold storage room. And Todd, don't get rid of those grips without talking to me, and I'll trade you for new grips if you ever want to. Totally serious. The rec center has a bowling alley for rest days and a moon board and other walls for rainy days, climbing walls. That's right. There's also a big training zone because the red will make you weak if you let it. It's just a fact. And they're doing some really cool things with local kids as well. So stop in when you're around, climb in the gym on those rainy days, and let them know that you appreciate what they're doing. Let's get to this talk with out of the blue dark horse, Brittany Goris.
Maybe don't know.
I do rely pretty heavily on the partners I've had. Many of my hardest routes, I don't know that I would have done them if it hadn't been for people that believed in me in ways that I might not have believed in myself.
Power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build.
Where all were you this year? So I know, Smith, you were in Squamish for a little while.
Yeah, so I was in Seattle for like the bulk of the year, and I spent like a month in the Arizona Strip. I spent a couple weeks in Smith. Then I was climbing mostly in Index for the summer and spring-ish. And then I sort of finished up my season there and went up to Squamish for a month. And then I went to Smith again and climbed there for another couple weeks. And then I came here.
And just got stupid pumped.
Yeah, so pumped on everything.
Yeah, you've had a few decent days, though. Was that you walking down the hill the other day? And my friend ended up driving you down the hill?
Because I fell down?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. After we drove by, because I was right in front of him, I was like, I wonder if that was her. I think it might have been.
Yep.
But I think you had a hood on, so I didn't really see you until we were driving right past. And then he told me that he was like creeping behind you and you fell down, and then he's like, he felt bad, so he's like, okay.
Give him apparently that's the way to get a ride up or down the hill at the Motherlode is to just eat shit and then while trying to get out of the way of a car, then they pick you up.
Yeah.
Things I've learned.
That's hilarious. So did you leave Index to head to Squamish because you sent? Like, did you just wrap it up and be like, I'm getting out of here? Or was that a planned trip?
Well,
how did that go?
So I wanted to get out of, I was kind of tired of climbing Index. I love Index, and I can't wait to go back next year, and I do have more goals there, but I was always kind of hoping to finish working on like my big project, City Park, before my work ended. So like I work all year, but I'm only forced to be in Seattle during the summer and the spring. And so it sort of coincided with the end of my work season, the busy season, when I could take off. And I left Index to go climb at Squamish. A lot of the big reason was because I felt like I never climbed well in Squamish, and I was starting to feel like I could climb pretty well in Index.
Yeah.
And even though they're both
Obviously
granite, I wanted to diversify a bit and like sort of target some of my weaknesses, which I feel like in trad climbing I still have more weaknesses than strengths. And so it was sort of intentional to try and get outside my comfort zone and spend time in a place I hadn't been. And I was like a little not burned out on Index, but ready to switch it up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna leave with a bang, that's a good way to do it. Let's talk about City Park a little bit, because when I saw the news, it like came out of the blue. I was blown away. It's a route you never hear about, very, very rarely. Old Todd Skinner route. Do you know the like rumored history around it with the like
quite well.
Todd calling the little store to see what the kid had posted on the bulletin board and all that? Yeah. I love all that history.
It's incredible.
And then the grease, axle grease or whatever, and the finger locks and the blow torching and all of that. So such a cool historical route, and I'm really drawn to those things. Not that I'm ever going to go climb City Park, because that will never happen, I guarantee. But I'm drawn to the history and the idea of it. So when I saw that you had done it, placing all the gear, I was blown away. Like, okay, who is this woman, and what else is she doing? And I need to follow her, and see what's up with this. How did you choose City Park? Well,
I would say, so the first time I went to Index was maybe 3 years ago, and I was a baby trad climber, and I sport climbed maybe like 12 plus, but not anything like what I had done in more recent years. And I climbed the route next to it, Godzilla, and I always just sort of am drawn to challenging myself, and my friends were like, yeah, sort of jokingly, like, you could top rope this thing off the same anchor as City Park. It's the hardest trad climb in Washington, or hardest climb at Index, or whatever they said. And of course I was going to try it. So I threw a few cams on my harness and I top roped it, and it was very wet, and I aided almost all of it. I couldn't even do half the moves. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm coming back for this. Like, one day I'm going to be strong enough. Like, I'm going to gun this thing down. And I don't know if it'll be in 5 years or 10 years, or like I'll be all old and crusty and come and do it when I'm like 85. But some part of me always had this route in the back of my mind. Even though the first time I tried it on top rope, I had no idea what it would take, and like no idea how to trad climb, even barely. I climbed 5'10" minus.
It just captured your imagination.
So it was always sort of like in my mind is like this Washington legendary climb that nobody actually does, but everybody like lowers down over it when they do the crag warm up, and they look at it and they maybe touch some of the holds and they think no way. And that's like so appealing to me, to like this thing that like everybody, it just has this like sinister reputation and history, and that like some like super masochistic part of me is like, oh, I want in on that. I want to like see if like this thing that's shut down like leagues of talented climbers, like I don't know, maybe I've got something that I can bring to the game.
That's so interesting to me because so many people like look at these really inspiring lines, and especially if they have this rich history, it can become a bigger myth than it is.
Yeah.
And that forces people away a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, here's this amazing rock climb that I would love to do someday, or anything. It doesn't even have to be rock climbing. Here's this amazing thing I would love to do someday, but it's got this mythology that I don't fit in that mythology, so I'm never going to be able to do this. You know, it's really easy to talk yourself out of those kind of things. Was that belief just always present in all the things that you have done?
Well, it's interesting because there's sort of two sides to that. There was the side of me that loves to test myself and face challenges and chase down my dreams with everything I've got. And so there was that was like, yes, I'm going to give everything I have for this climb and train really hard. And then there was this other side of me that did look at it and think, wow, all these incredible climbers have tried this and not done it. It's only seen before me. There were 2 true red point ascents.
Right.
And, you know, people like some of my biggest heroes have tried it and not done it. And, you know, I would look at that and I'd be like, what? Yeah, right. You know?
Right.
And so I was very intimidated. And also I had an interesting mental block sort of that was Index became a very special place to me very quickly. And there are so many test pieces at the Lower Town Wall where City Park is located, and I had done maybe 2 of them. And there's like every route is a test piece there, pretty much, because everything is sandbagged, and it takes quite a few tries to work out the beta. And so I had done almost none of the classics, almost nothing off the t-shirt, and I didn't have much experience in the community. And there's all these people that just... Index is the only place that a certain number of people in Washington climb because they have this obsession with it. And I very quickly developed the same obsession where I went from never climbing there to Index being the only place I wanted to climb. And there's something about it that just is, you know, infatuating. And I felt like I hadn't put in my time. And here I was trying the hardest route at this crag. And I was like, who am I to just show up, not do any of the test pieces, and just be like, yeah, I'm going to work on that, the hardest thing here.
But that's what you did.
Yeah, but I did have like a certain mental block where I was like,
did you go do some of those classics?
Later.
After City Park?
Yeah. Yeah, my
like, I'll just get this one out of the way.
Right. Yeah,
And
after I did it, I decided I wanted to do all of the climbs on the Index t-shirt because nobody has ever done that. And
sick.
It's just a random collection of climbs
Yeah,
that some
totally.
dude put together. But, you know, it's like a local tribute sort of thing because it's such a special place. And, you know, all the climbers have the t-shirt. I didn't even have the t-shirt. The City Park's like on the t-shirt. And here I am just... I don't even have a trad rack. I do now, but like I didn't at the time. And
I love it. This is the thing that I find so interesting about you. Like you're really like smiling, glowing when you're talking about this mythology because you believe in this mythology, but then you're just like, oh well, I'm just going to do the hardest one first. Why not?
Yeah.
Something in there allows you to do that. And you know, I was reading your 8A actually, and like 90% of the hardest routes you've done, you're like, I can't believe I did this. I had no business on this. I don't even know why I got on it, but here I was at the chains. I have no idea how this happened, you know? And I'm like, wow, there's some level of belief in there that maybe you're not even conscious of that just seems to take over you. Like I can see it taking over when you're talking about it. You're like getting excited about this belief that happened months ago, you know? I'm curious where that comes from. Was it happening before rock climbing? Was it like, do you apply it to your career? Did you apply it to youth sports? Where have you seen it before?
That's interesting because I've been climbing my whole life. And so I feel like there wasn't really a before climbing. When I think of before climbing, I think of before I had the identity that I have now. Like,
so were you a a youth climber, like competitor, or did you start outside?
I was a gym rat for most of my childhood climbing, but I wasn't an avid competitor. I would compete once or twice a year just at my gym's local comps. And I would always win because I'd be the only person in my category because there were like no kids at the gym climbing. And, I would like walk away with crash pads and the adults would all be like grumbling over like, who's this kid that just showed up and climbed like a couple like V4s or something.
And that's what all the old tradies are doing now. Like, who is this kid?
Yeah.
Just showed up and crushed the hardest rooted index.
Yeah.
She doesn't even have the t-shirt.
Yeah. But I don't know. Like, it's interesting talking about the, how my comments are all like, oh, I didn't think it would ever go because, I do a lot of times rely pretty heavily on, the partners I've had, and many of my hardest routes were, I don't know that I would have done them if it hadn't been for people that believed in me in ways that I might not have believed in myself. And like with City Park or with other climbs, like one of the more meaningful sends of my climbing career was a climb called Fight Club. And I know you're not supposed to talk about Fight Club, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Because
on this podcast, those rules don't apply.
It was really meaningful to me. And it was, I would say like with these sorts of things, I would go into them and I would train really hard and I would want it so bad. And it would be so important to me and meaningful to me. And I would have the mindset of like, I will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes in order to send this route. Like, I care that much. But then, like, at the same time, like, I don't know if it'll ever happen. And that's where that sort of, I can't believe it attitude comes from, is that maybe I was willing to commit and to give everything I had, but I, didn't know if it would be enough. And that was, like, a big thing on City Park was, like, I don't know if I'll send it in a couple tries or if it will take me my entire life. But
have there been things that you put that commitment into and then didn't send?
Yeah, and like there was a climb and it was kind of the one that led me to City Park. Actually, I was working on this climb at Little Cy called Porn Star, and I was falling at the last move over and over and over again, and that's the kind of route it is. And it just, I was not really inspired by the route in the first place. It was just something hard, and I was sort of looking for inspiration, and I wasn't finding it in that route, but I kept trying it anyway. And I had put so much time into it at a certain point that I just wanted to do it as just like
to
make it worth.
Or you feel like you've been wasting time.
Yeah,
I have that feeling all the damn time.
Yeah, and I fell off it. Like, yelled at the route, like, what does it take? Like, why don't I have what it takes? I don't know what it takes. I've put so much into this and I don't have it. And I got on it again that day and I got even farther and I still fell and I just lowered down and was like, I'm done with this. And that was when I started climbing at Index, and that was when I started like trad climbing and very quickly looking for a trad project, and I always knew what my trad project would be.
So Index was sort of an escape from
it was
from Porn Star. That sort of rebuffed this hidden belief that you have, that you're just going to throw yourself at it and see what happens.
Yeah, and it's one thing to throw yourself at a climb that you're not inspired by.
Yeah,
and it's another thing to have a climb that is actually a dream and something that you think about when you're falling asleep because you want it so bad and you want it more than just it being another project,
Yeah, and I can see that in your face, like, and maybe it's because you have had this experience on Porn Star already and you've had this experience on City Park already, but talking about Porn Star, there's like no shift in your demeanor. You're just like, this thing happened. It's very clinical. But then as soon as you start talking about City Park, you're like lighting up.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because you're less inspired by this climb.
Right.
More inspired by this climb. You know? And I think that's really, really important. And I mean, is that where the belief, that hidden belief, comes from? Is it inspiration rather than belief, really?
I think there is something to that where it's maybe the climbs that really inspire me. And there are some, like Fight Club was the first one. I trained all winter for it. I would train for hours and hours and hours a day and just because it was too wet to climb it during the winter in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I sort of first found the ability to have a long-term project that I was willing to commit myself 100% to. And it wasn't that I just picked a climb at random. It was that I tried to climb, and something about it was so inspirational to me that I was like, it made me willing to commit myself like that. And that was the thing with Porn Star. I just sort of was climbing it, and it wasn't a climb that really inspired me in that way. And so It wasn't something that I was like, yeah, I'll fall here as many times as it takes. It was like, I'm so fucking sick of falling here. I'm done with this bullshit. You know,
sure. Not
like, and it's like the kind of project where you have to take like the tiniest victories, those are the projects that are like the ones that really take like that, whatever it is, that inspiration or belief from, in my world, or that's like what separates whether I'm willing to keep going and keep like suffering through the failures, or if it's something that I just don't care enough and I'll walk away. Yeah.
Well, it's a big time, energy, emotional investment to get stuck into a project.
Oh yeah.
And if you feel like you might be wasting your time, it's really tough.
Yeah.
To keep going.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever go back just to finish it up? Or you
maybe.
Just like done with it?
Yeah. I'm a really, really stubborn person, and any climb that I've ever been on that I didn't finish is just kind of eats at me, gnawing in the back of my head. Like there was earlier this year, I tried Rude Boys in Smith, and I walked away from it.
I remember your comment on 8A.
Yeah, I walked away, and it bothered me so much. Like I felt like I had let myself down, and I hadn't given it all I had, and it just bothered me so much. And I came back to it this fall, and I had a lot of trouble with it. It shut me down pretty hard over and over and over again. And I just didn't understand why I wasn't able to do it. And I had to like think back about past projects and deal with a lot of like random mental issues about just like, I don't know. I felt like an entitlement towards it. Like I should do it. And I had to like let go of some of that. And I kind of had developed a hatred for the climb, but I had this stubbornness in me that was like, if you walk away again, like you'll never forgive yourself. You know, it's worth it to keep like plugging away, because when it goes down, it'll all be worth it. And it was like, I was so proud to do it. And, like I'm sure that at some point I'll probably go back to Porn Star, because it's the same thing. It's like that stubborn part of me is just like, you walked away. You know, you fell short, you took the test and you failed, and like that test is still there. Go take it again,
Yeah.
But, not till I run out of more inspiring climbs.
Well, there's lots of them out there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You just said something really interesting, that you almost felt entitled to it.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you mean. Do you think, having done City Park, and you did Baby Fight, right?
Yeah.
Which is 14A.
Yeah.
Did doing those harder routes play into, I should be able to do Rude Boys?
Absolutely.
I'm entitled to this.
And I've climbed a number of things of the same grade as Rude Boys and things that are harder, and that was a total ego thing that I was like, this is a grade that I should be able to do in less tries than this. Yep. And I shouldn't be having this much trouble. And there was all these like shoulds in my head. And actually I wasn't even able to put it into that concise of words, the sense of entitlement thing. It was a friend that said that to me. And he was like, you got to let go of the sense of entitlement that you have for this route because, you know, like nobody's entitled to anything in climbing.
Right.
And that was like pretty eye-opening to me because I think of a lot of climbs that way. I'll walk up to the crag and I'll be like, this grade, that's a warm-up.
I on-site this.
Yeah.
I'll do this. Yeah.
Then if I don't, or if I like fall on the warm-up or something, it bothers me way more than it should.
It can screw up your whole day.
My ego says that that's a level that I should be above, even though that shouldn't be a thing, you know. And that was a big learning process, and I'm definitely not done working on it either. I still feel certain ways. Like I was really tired, and it was pretty cold 2 days ago, and I was on like a 12A looking for an easy victory here at the Motherlode, and I fell and I was really mad, and then I went bolt to bolt and it was super hard because I was really tired, and
you're like, where's the sun? Why is it so wet? I hate this rock climb.
Like, it's so accurate. I came down and I was like, it's so mad because it just, you know, in the back of my head was like, this should be like a warm up, you know, and it was a total just humbling ego thing that obviously still have room for growth.
still struggling with right this second. Do you ever have those moments when you're on these big projects that ultimately end up with you clipping chains, glowing, smiling every time you mention it? Were there those moments on Fight Club or Baby Fight or City Park or any of these other routes that you've done that now you talk about as if they were really inspiring and it was all gold? Were there those moments where you're like, I don't know if I even like this rock climb, I'm over it?
On the proudest sends that I've done, the ones that really have a special place in my heart, there were not really a lot of moments where I was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, or like, I don't know if I like this route, or like things where I was like, I'm starting to hate this, you know?
Yeah.
Those were all the I would say all of the proudest things I've done, and the ones that really stick with me and that I just would like could talk forever about. I never really had that. It was always sort of, this is my dream.
Yeah.
And I'm going to chase down my dream with everything I've got. Like, this particular route is my current dream, or sending something like this. And there were definitely like each one of those has had its own, you know, mental challenges. Like with Baby Fight, I had never climbed 14A before. I'd never even done 13D. I skipped 13D, and I was trying it because I didn't really have any other projects, and I wanted to project something, and it was a link up of 2 routes I'd already done, and I didn't believe that was a grade that was possible for me.
Right.
I'd never let myself dream that big, even though I do dream pretty big, but I'd never like really let myself believe that it was possible.
See, I think I would climb many 514s before I would climb City Park. So
most people would say the same thing.
Yes, they would.
Yeah, I climbed 1, I guess. But there was a moment where it was like the weekend before I sent it, where I finally like allowed myself to believe that I was capable of doing it. And I have like this very vivid memory, and it was I just had the best go ever, and I knew that I was going to do it soon. And like that night after I got back from the crag, I sat in my car and I like just cried my eyes out for like 20 or 30 minutes because I just finally like had found the inspiration that I had been looking for on that route for so long, and I just like finally let myself want it, and finally let myself believe that I could do it, and just like let myself feel all the emotions that I'd kind of been denying because I was afraid that it was something that wasn't ever going to happen. And that was like a really powerful thing that I learned from that route. Like, cause it seemed like such a crazy dream to climb 514.
Yeah. And
when I finally accepted that I could, and that I wanted to, and let myself want to, and let myself think about myself as a climber that was capable of doing that, it was like a pretty big change in how I even approached the route. And I had so much more confidence the next time I got on it, and so much more drive when I was training, because I was no longer just sort of like half-assedly going for this goal that was something I wanted, but something I didn't really think was possible. And I think that like probably had a big factor in when I went for City Park, because it was like I needed to not be afraid of my dreams and not like be so intimidated that I didn't give everything I had, because like a route like that does take everything you have, at least for me. I'm sure there are climbers out there that could do it with a little bit less training, but
Man, I love that entire answer. I wish I had like more room in the beginning of the podcast where I put the quotes over the music, because I would put all of that in there. You sort of, you didn't say this, but you led me into thinking about it, and I'm going to ask what might be a tough question. Mm-hmm. We don't talk a ton about grades on here because while they matter, and I think they're totally relevant, they're not the most important factor most of the time. And, and everything you're saying leads me to believe that they're not the most important factor to you. Mm-hmm. I brought up Baby Fight, even though it was your first 514, and you're more interested in talking about Fight Club and City Park, because those routes really inspired you. Yeah. How much does the grade play into being inspired and wanting to put that much effort into a rock climb? Like, has this been happening since 512? Or do you even remember before 512?
I remember my first of every grade.
Yeah?
I remember my first 512. I remember my first 12A, and my first 12C was 2 weeks later.
And you were looking for that inspiration back then as well?
Yeah, my first 12A was an on-site. But then I was in 10 sleep. I was on my first road trip, and I was just kind of, I didn't really know how to project anything, but I was sort of, my friend that I was traveling with and I were both like, we're going to find projects. And we didn't know anything about how you would like pick a project, but
obviously we sort of just were like, on-sited.
I need a grade that I think I could do and that I want to do. And so I sort of picked a grade, and then I started looking for climbs of that grade, and I ended up working on this thing that I did in a couple days, and it, I don't know if it wasn't like a huge inspiration, but I still like remember that climb, and I remember the process, and I think like a lot of other things I've done, the grade doesn't matter as much as like what the grade just represents, like a level of challenge.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I like a good challenge, and so, and it also, I mean, it does play into the accomplishment that you get, like the sense of accomplishment you get from it too, if it's something that is meaningful to you. And I think I care about grades as just like a matter of, like measuring the level of challenge and measuring my own ability, because you can use it to just like compare to how hard you used to climb. And for me, like if I could have one thing in climbing, it would be to continue to progress for as long as I am rock climbing. Like I want to continue to like push myself and to grow, and grades are a way of measuring growth. And
yeah, absolutely they are.
So that's like what's important about them to me, is not necessarily to log on to 8A and to see how I rank, but to log on to 8A and look at the little graph that shows what I climbed 4 years ago and what I climbed 8 years ago. And to see,
I don't look at that graph anymore because mine's going the opposite direction now.
I know the day will come where I've
blocked that graph out of my mind.
Yeah, and then like the other graph that shows the number of the number of routes you've done over time. Like I like that one too.
I like that one. It still shows everything I did 10 years ago.
Yeah, because I do another goal of mine is to do 1,000 routes of 512 or harder in my life.
Sick.
And so like I think it's fun to like measure yourself in those ways.
I do too. I think that's important. It's how we gauge progress.
Right.
And another funny thing that grades can do though is totally sandbag you into that feeling of entitlement.
Yeah, and that was like a big part of what I learned when I started climbing at Index, because I had been chasing grades up till then, and like that's part of working on Pornstar was like it was a high grade and I wanted that. And at Index there's a joke that everything's 11D, and it's true. There will be climbs there that are at 11D that somewhere else they would be 13A. I've had to project 11Ds there, and even sport climbs. And there's a famous 12B there that Jonathan Segrist called 13C. It's just like the sandbagging is outrageous, and it was a big like thing for me to when I started climbing there to let go of the grades and
just get inspired
and just to climb, to find inspiration in climbing the routes for what they were instead of a number.
Do you have something that you're inspired by now? You don't have to say it if you don't want to, but I'm just curious if there's something out there.
There are climbs in Index that I want to go back for. I don't have any particular climb that I'm actively projecting that is like a big thing. There are routes that I think would be dream routes that I would like to go try at some point, but I can't say that they would be, until I've actually tried them. I don't know that they would be, the next big thing, because there have been things that I thought would be my next goal and I would get on it, and then it just wasn't, it didn't like light that fire in me.
That happened to me this trip, actually. I came with the intention of Zookeeper because it just looks so cool. Yeah. And it's totally an anti-style for me, but there's kind of a lot of shenanigans surrounding it, and it's in a weird little damp cave, and I just couldn't see putting the sort of effort I would need to put into it without being inspired. Right. And I just wasn't. Yeah.
And that was like a thing that when I was in Smith, I ended up working on Rude Boys the whole time almost, or like the first like week or two. And
it was like hate projecting.
Yeah, I was hate projecting, but I wanted to work on Scarface, and I got on it after I did Rude Boys and kind of didn't really feel that inspiration. And so I didn't work on it. And there were some other things that I wanted to do as well, but it didn't, I haven't found like the next thing that really did it for me. Like that was a big challenge for me so Fight Club was the first climb that I ever did that really, really inspired me that way. And after I sent it, I like felt like I needed another big project. Yeah. And it took me a long time to find one. And
does it just strike you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it something you build up in your mind first?
I don't know. That one was like, it was the first time anything like that had ever happened where I just cared that much about a climb. And I felt like I had like a relationship with the climb. And after I sent it, it felt like I felt like I was going through a breakup. Like, because I no longer had this relationship that had been such a defining part of my life for the last couple months. And I just didn't know how to fill that space, and nothing I tried projecting was working because it wasn't inspiring me in the same way. And that was like at the beginning of last year. And so since then I've learned how to not have that happen when I send a big project, to not like feel this big void that I need to find another one right away. Nowadays, once I do a big project or something, I let myself have a little bit more fun and not necessarily just like start.
You're free for a little while.
Just like rapidly seeking out the next thing immediately, because
like you should do if in a breakup.
Yeah, it doesn't.
You don't like jump to the next long-term relationship.
Right. It just happens when it needs to happen. I sort of like to let it be that way.
Yeah.
because I have not found success when I've tried to actively seek it out.
I think that's good beta.
Yeah.
And we're getting sort of...
We're getting kicked out.
Yeah, we're getting kicked out here. We're at the Lee County Rec Center, and they're closing up. But I appreciate you holing up here in the conference room.
It's my pleasure.
Surrounded by all the cool old holds. So they've got a wall here now that we were just bouldering in because it's gross and freezing cold outside.
Yeah.
And
34 degrees out today. I climbed 3 pitches.
yeah, I can't believe you went out. When you messaged me this morning, like, yeah, we're going out. I'm like, she's way more hardcore than I am, because I'm definitely not. But thank you a ton for sitting down with me.
My pleasure. Anytime.
That, I didn't really know what to expect out of this because we've never met. And frankly, I like doing interviews like that where I don't know the person well and we don't talk about it beforehand. We just jump in.
Yeah.
Because I really want to learn what makes people tick. Mm-hmm. And this one is especially fun and interesting for me. So thank you.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to have like a sheet of questions or anything.
No way. I don't think about that stuff before I start. We just jump in. So cool. Thanks, Brittany.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I really do love going into these conversations mostly blind, not really knowing what motivates someone. And this one definitely did not disappoint. And, big thanks to the Lee County Rec Center for hosting, and huge thanks to Brittany for taking the time to sit down. I'm really looking forward to digging more into her motivations and drive sometime down the road, because I'm really impressed with the ability to move beyond the mythology that we often create around specific routes or grades. Especially when, like in her case, it seems at first a little bit indecisive, but then very succinct once she gets down to it. It's really fascinating. I've put links to Brittany on the internet in the show notes right there in your pocket supercomputer, so you can follow what she's up to. And if you aren't yet subscribed to this podcast, do it. I just discovered that if you say, "Hey Siri, subscribe to the Power Company podcast," Siri will do the work for you. And even if you're that lazy, you can still find us on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and the Pinterests at Power Company Climbing. And you can also, if you're that lazy, look for us on Twitter. You'll get really frustrated. You're not going to find us there because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, this time.